Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I said good afternoon. Let me welcome you to the campus of Howard University inside of Crampton Auditorium to the second debate, More Than a Game, the Mordecai Wyatt Johnson, Benjamin Elijah Mays student debate. All right now. Okay, I understand school spirit. Please, at this time, let me ask each and every one of you to turn your mobile devices on silent. Make sure everything is quiet. I'm Reggie Miles from the School of Communications in the Department of Radio, Television, and Film. I'll be your master of ceremonies for this debate, More Than a Game. I'd like to first bring to the stage the Howard University Gospel Choir. I know you can do better than that. The Howard University Gospel Choir. What a wonderful way to begin an outstanding program and a service like this with a little gospel music. I like that. Now let's have a word. Let's bring to you right now the Dean of the Chapel, Dr. Bernard Richardson.
Let us pray. Most gracious and loving God, you are the giver of every good and perfect gift. We give thanks for the gift of Howard University and Morehouse College. We give thanks for what these institutions mean to us as a people, a nation, and the global community. On this day, we give thanks for the opportunity to be participants, to be witnesses, to uphold, to build upon the great legacies of Howard University and Morehouse College. We give you now our student debaters. When they stand before us, may they find strength and inspiration in knowing that we come not to judge or to critique, but to celebrate. We celebrate their gifts and talents. We celebrate their courage. We celebrate all whom they represent, the emergence of a new generation of leaders. We celebrate, O God, that the labors of our forebears have not been in vain. Through your grace, Morehouse and Howard will continue to provide our nation and the global community leaders who will help to make this world what it never has been and yet must be. Bless now what our eyes will see, our ears will hear, and our hearts will feel on this day. In your name we pray, amen.
All right, now let us bring to you and give to you the welcomes from the prospective schools participating today. Let us give a warm Howard Bison welcome to Dr. Clarissa Myrick Harris, Dean of the Humanities and Social Sciences of Morehouse College.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here. I bring you greetings to President Sidney Rabeau, the Howard University debate team, and the entire Howard University family, from President Robert Franklin, the Morehouse College debate team, the Division of Humanities and Social Sciences, and the entire Morehouse family. Morehouse family, stand and take a bow. Welcome. Welcome to the second annual Howard University Morehouse College Game Before the Game, the Mordecai Wyatt Johnson and Benjamin Elijah Mays student debate. We are pleased and proud to be here for the second year of the brainchild of Presidents Rabeau and Franklin. We are continuing a proud tradition started by Mordecai Johnson when he was a student at Morehouse College and participated in the debate team, and by Benjamin Elijah Mays when he was Dean of the School of Religion here, and then President of Morehouse College. You'll hear more about that later. But right now, let's get ready for a dynamic debate between Morehouse College, ranked number 16 nationally, and the top HBCU debate team, parliamentary debate team, and the dynamic Howard University student debate team, which is under the leadership of Professor Angela Minor. Let's get ready for the game before the game. Thank you.
Dr. Harris, let's give her a round of applause, please, again. I understand school spirit, students, but please let us refrain from the booing from the other school. Let's applaud for everyone, because that's just not cool. We all are under the HBCU family. It is my pleasure to bring to you the dean, the interim dean of the Howard University School of Communications, Dr. Chuka Onwu-Macheli. He is presently the interim dean for the School of Communications at Howard. He previously served as vice president of the Digital Bridge Institute in Nigeria and was the chair of the communications department at Bowie State University. Dr. Onwu-Macheli is well published in international football and media. Importantly, he is a Bison. He is a Howard Bison, having graduated in 1990 with a PhD in human communication studies right here from Howard. Dr. Chuka.
Good afternoon. I welcome you to this great event here at Howard University. Of course, this is the second year of the game before the game. That is the Mordecai Wyatt Johnson, Benjamin Elijah Mays student debate. Last year, I was actually among you in the crowd and witnessed a debate that, bar none, was among the best. Today, we are going to be expecting that they even do something better. However, one of the things that I will point out today is that this is Howard Nation. This is the Mecca. The Howard University debate team is part of the Martin Luther King Jr. Forensics Program in the university. And it's a leading team in the nation, having been successful in several national competitions. Furthermore, the team has participated in several exhibitions, including the NAACP's Great Debate that featured Howard University and Yale University. This year, the teams from Howard University and Morehouse will be debating affirmative action as well as the national voter ID law. I don't know about you, but debating affirmative action is not the easiest thing, depending on which side you are on. However, I trust that these students who can really think on their feet will do a great job. After all, they follow the path that had been taken by some giants. Among those two giants are actually Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. These two individuals have not simply debated trivialities. Over history, they've debated complex, controversial, and national issues that defined not only their times, but our times and history as well. They did not seek political correctness, but fought for advancement of the community in which they lived in. Importantly, they did not have to be on one side of the debate. In fact, both Washington and Du Bois often found themselves on opposite sides of a debate, even though they shared similar goals, which is the advancement of the African American community. In one critical debate, Du Bois challenged the Atlanta Compromise, penned by Washington, which provided African Americans access to education, but acceded to political and social inequality and continued control by white America. This was at that time, remember? They each provided persuasive arguments on each side of the debate, but it was clear that each one saw some measure of advancement that did not exist at that time. Today, Howard University and Morehouse College debate teams follow in those giant footsteps. The teams can be informed by what Albert Einstein once said: the important thing is not to stop questioning. And curiosity has its own reason for existing. That statement by Einstein is what determines the meaning of debate for us. If we did not question the structure of the earth, we would still think it is flat. If we did not question the value of humans as commodity, we would still be embroiled in slavery. If we did not question Jim Crow's laws, we would still have racial segregation in public places. Therefore, we must never stop questioning. No matter which side of the debate that you are on, this afternoon, we should never take a position that an idea is sacrosanct. We must always question because we learn and grow from such questioning. Today, I ask that we listen intently to the debaters and learn the strong points on each side of the issue, pro and con. After all, you, as well as the debaters, symbolize this quote from W.E.B. Du Bois, which I repeat: the Negro race, like all races, is going to be saved by its exceptional men. The problem of education, then, among Negroes, must first of all deal with the talented tenth. It is the problem of developing the best of this race, that they may guide the mass away from the contamination and death of the worst. With that, I am certain that you want this debate to get started. Before I walk away, I take the opportunity to please thank both presidents, Dr. Sidney A. Review of Howard University, as well as Dr. Robert M. Franklin of Morehouse College for making this debate possible. Please enjoy the debate, and thank you.
Now, with words for the occasion, I'd like to bring to the podium Dr. Alvin Thornton, Senior Advisor to the President of Howard University.
Greetings to everyone, and welcome to the second annual Johnson-Mays debate. On page 15 of your commemorative program, and all of you, please make sure that you take a copy of this commemorative program with you. You will see a summary of the reason our two presidents asked us to make sure that we have a Mays-Johnson debate. These are two great giants. We want our students, especially our middle school students, our new entering students, to know these two great men. And it is through this debate that we are trying to make you understand who they were. Benjamin Elijah Mays, president of Morehouse College, for 27 years. 27 years, the president of Morehouse College. And as our two presidents know, that's a long time. Mordecai Wyatt Johnson, the president of Howard University, for 34 years. They're both sons of each other's institution. Benjamin Mays, as was indicated, having served here on the faculty and dean of our School of Religion. In fact, the chapel is named in his honor here at Howard University. He enriched the soil of Howard and defined the future of our university. Mordecai Wyatt Johnson is a graduate of Morehouse, this intersection. But more importantly, what these two men did was to define a nation and save a nation from itself at a critical period of time when it didn't understand equality and justice and pluralism and how to make possible what we have in this room. So when we have this debate as a part of the nation's classic, what we're doing for our young people is to reconnect them richly to their past in the name of Johnson and Mays. Let them know of what they created, which is democratic possibility, and enrich and strengthen our young people to go forward. as matriculants at Morehouse and at Howard. And this debate is a part of the larger weekend that we have, which we call the Nation's Classic, More Than a Game. We had the STEM experience yesterday, which surfaced the great scholarship at Morehouse and Howard. We had the youth debate addressing the great electoral issues facing our nation and addressed interpersonal dynamics. And today, as I step aside, the Mordecai Wyatt Johnson, Benjamin Mays debate. Please enjoy the experience.
Coming to the stage right now, we will have a musical selection from Mr. Timothy Miller, soloist and adjunct faculty member in the Department of Music at Morehouse College. Put your hands together for Timothy Miller.
I dream a world where man no other will scorn, where love will bless the earth, and peace its path adorn. I dream a world where all will know sweet freedom's way, where greed no longer saps the soul, nor avarice blights our day. A world I dream where black or white, whatever race you be, will share the bounties of the earth, and every man is free, where wretchedness will hang its head, and joy like a pearl attend the needs of all mankind. Of such I dream, of such I dream.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Wonderful. Mr. Timothy Miller, Morehouse College. It is now, we're getting close to the good time. Now we want to bring to you the introduction of the debate teams. Dr. Barbara Griffin from Howard University and Dr. William Bynum from Morehouse College will introduce the debate teams.
This is going to be a great afternoon. Good afternoon, HU. All right. Good afternoon, Morehouse. Okay, I want to welcome you to this afternoon's debate. I want to welcome President Rabeau and President Franklin and the visitors from Morehouse, Howard University students, staff, faculty, and all guests. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce to you the members of the Howard University debate team. I will start with the first is Mr. Daniel Coates. All right, you can stand up. Mr. Coates is a senior legal communications candidate from Dallas, Texas. Applied to Howard University because he believed that Howard was a place where he would strengthen his leadership skills, and he was right, broaden his worldview, and challenge his spiritual man. I like that. Since attending Howard, Daniel has become an All-American attorney among 400 competing mock trial teams at the American Mock Trial Association tournaments. He was Mr. Howard University for the 2011-2012 school year and the founder of Student Speak Research Institute, an institute that provides entry-level research experience to students who seek to take a systematic approach to student advocacy. Daniel Coates has committed his spring attendance to Princeton Theological Seminary for his Master's of Divinity, where he will undergo theological reflection and discernment. All right. He lives by the quote, and you have to listen to this. I wrote it down myself. What you can get determines how you make a living, but what you can give determines how you make a life. Thank you, Mr. Coates. Our next HU debater is Jennifer Brooks, who's a native of Jackson, Mississippi. Where's Jennifer? Okay, I think Jennifer is, yeah, she's the timekeeper, so she's here. There she is. She's currently studying communication and culture with a concentration in legal communication. She has a 3.7 GPA and currently serves as the vice president of the Walter H. Annenberg Honors Program. Jennifer's background since the age of 17 has been in journalism. In high school, she co-hosted and co-produced Radio Teen Talk at WRBJ 97.7 FM, a local station in Jackson. Jennifer is also the recipient of the Emma L. Bowen Foundation for Minorities Interested in Media, which requires her to intern at 16 WAPT, a local station in Jackson and an affiliate of Hearst Television. Now in her junior year at Howard, Jennifer plans to attend law school to better prepare her to make a more meaningful impact on the world. She is full of energy and excited about her present and future endeavors. Jennifer Brooks is a proud member of the Howard University debate team. All right. DeMarquin Johnson, all right, is a sophomore political science major from Houston, Texas. He debated competitively in the National Forensic League throughout his high school career. During his first year at Howard, DeMarquin was a member of the Freshman Leadership Academy and crossed Phi Alpha Delta Law Fraternity International in the spring. Currently, he serves as Student Advocacy Chairman in the Howard University Student Association Senate. DeMarquin finds solace in this quote. This is deep. I wrote this one down as well. Anyone can steer the ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. Okay. Thank you, Doc. Gavette Richardson. All right. Is from the beautiful and historic city of Birmingham, Alabama. She is a senior broadcast journalism major, political science minor. At Howard, Gavette is a member of the mock trial and debate teams, chapel assistants, and serves as the president of the Alabama Club. Gavette has been a member of the debate team for 4 years. She participated in the NAACP debates against Yale University and last year's inaugural Johnson-Mays debate. Gavette's favorite quotation is, "To whom much is given, of whom much is required." Thank you, Mr. Gavette. And finally, Abraham Williamson, a junior political science major from North Little Rock, Arkansas. He is the current president of the Howard University debate team. Mr. Williamson is a member of the College of Arts and Sciences Honors Program and serves as co-captain of the Howard University Club baseball team. He is a member of the Howard chapter for the NAACP and was selected for the 12th annual Public Policy Leadership Conference at the Kennedy School of Government in 2012. Abraham Williamson was a panelist for the Division of the Humanities 2012 Common Text Symposium honoring Dr. Kwame Anthony Appiah. And Mr. Williamson has plans of attending graduate school after graduation. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Howard University debate team. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Griffin. Now let's give a warm welcome to Dr. William Bynum, Vice President for Student Services at Morehouse College, as we introduce the debate team from Morehouse.
Good afternoon, everyone. Before I introduce our debate team, I want to take a point of privilege as Vice President for Student Service at Morehouse to introduce to you 6 of the hardest working and most visible students on the Morehouse and Spelman campus who've traveled a long way to participate in this debate, and that is Ms. Maroon and White and her court and her escorts. If you would, Ms. Maroon and White is Ms. Jasmine Matthews, and she is escorted by our SGA president, Mr. Andre Washington. Our first attendant is Ms. Taylor Hawkins, and she's escorted by the SGA vice president, Mr. Timmy Okodi-Euro. And our second attendant is Ms. Cindy Williams, and she's escorted by SGA executive secretary, Mr. Martavius Leonard. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the director of our forensics program and debate coach is a 1997 graduate of Morehouse College. He was a political science major at Morehouse, and one of his most valued activities while at the college, he was the captain of the debate team and was named a debate All-American. After Morehouse, he earned his Juris Doctorate degree from the University of Connecticut Law School. He is currently the managing attorney of the Newby Law Group of Atlanta. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing our debate team is our Director of Forensic Program and Debate Coach, Mr. Kenneth A. Newby.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me bring greetings and welcome to you from Morehouse College. To the students of Howard University, I say it is a pleasure to be here. To my Morehouse friends and family who are here, I say I'm glad to have you here. Thank you for your support. It is indeed my honor and privilege today to introduce the Morehouse College speech and debate team. But before I get to that, I just want to say that today we're in a hall of great debaters from both institutions. Both teams have worked hard to prepare for this day, and both teams have prepared to argue either side of the resolution. So I think they both deserve a round of applause for that preparation. To my immediate left, we have Austin Williams. Austin is a senior political science major, graduating senior from Los Angeles, California. He currently serves as the captain for the Morehouse College debate team. In 2012, he was a quarterfinalist at the state finals, and in 2011, he was a finalist at the Georgia Parliamentary Debate Association state finals. Because of Austin's great leadership on the team is catapulted into a national ranking. Austin has also received numerous awards for excellence in speech and debate last year, breaking at nearly every competition he attended. Next, we have Byron Granberry, who's a senior from Rockville, Maryland. Mr. Granberry is the president of the Pi Kappa Delta chapter of Morehouse College. Pi Kappa Delta is the largest and oldest forensics national honor society in our nation. Last year, Mr. Granberry was a finalist in the state finals and went on to the Pi Kappa Delta National Tournament, where he finished as one of the top 10 speakers in our nation. Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Chris Fortson-Gaines. Chris is also a senior political science major, hailing from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Last year, Chris led the team as his captain. He also led it in numerous exhibition debates against Yale University, Bates College, and Wiley College in a documentary film. Chris also was one of the finalists in numerous competitions in debate. He also attended the American Parliamentary Debate Association's tournament held by George Washington University right here in D.C. and was one of the few debaters who finished as a ranked finalist. Thank you. Last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Nicholas Bacon. Mr. Bacon is a political science major, graduating senior from Nashville, Tennessee. He's won numerous awards in both speech and debate, winning top speaker awards at 4 out of the 5 tournaments that he attended last year. Mr. Bacon also traveled to the Pi Kappa Delta Nationals, where he helped the team achieve its national ranking of finishing 16th in our nation. Thank you. Serving as timekeeper for today's debate is Jamil Odom. Jamil Odom is a senior English major, graduating this year from Morehouse College. He's also an academic scholarship student. As a matter of fact, all of the members of the Morehouse College debate team before you have GPAs above a 3.0. All of them are graduating seniors, and all of them are going to law school. I give you our Morehouse College speech and debate team.
How about a round of applause from both teams from these historic universities? All right, we're just about at the starting gate to do this, but first I need to introduce you to the moderator. But one word of caution, during the debate, please, kind of like hold your applause as the students are debating. That will prolong the process. Wait until the end of each round and then make that wonderful round of applause for your favorite debater. Could you do that for me, please? I want to bring to the stage right now our distinguished moderator. District Judge Alexander Williams was born in Washington, D.C. He earned his undergraduate degree from Howard University in 1970. And he turned his attention to the law school, achieving his J.D. cum laude in 1973 from Howard University Law School. And then in 1988, he returned to Howard University and attended the School of Divinity, obtaining a master's degree in 1991. He also received an MA degree from Temple University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1995. Also in 1995, Judge Williams received an honorary doctorate degree from Southeastern University. Let us welcome now our distinguished moderator, District Judge Alexander J. Williams, Jr., whose son is also a Morehouse student.
Thank you so much. That's a Morehouse graduate in 1999. My son, named after me, Morehouse man. So you know I'm going to be fair on both sides. Good evening, everyone, and to Dr. Franklin and Dr. Rabeau, presidents, Dr. Thornton, and all who are responsible for this event. It's a great joy for me to be here today and to have been asked to be the moderator of this great event. We are getting ready to commence a great debate on 2 wonderful, important issues by great debaters from wonderful institutions. Now, if you look on pages 19 and 20 of the program, you'll see the format for the debate. I have been already briefed on the rules. I want to say that this is a parliamentary debate, and you see on page 20 the rules of the debate. There's going to be 6 presenters on each proposition. The first speaker would be the Prime Minister, who introduces their side of the argument. The second will be the leader of the opposition, who introduces their side of the argument. The third presenter will be the member of the government who will offer the first rebuttal, and then the fourth and fifth will be from the opposition. Again, a member of the opposition will offer their first rebuttal. The fifth speaker will be also from the opposition, which will defend their final rebut. And then finally, the sixth speaker would be the prime minister who will defend the final rebuttal. Now, because this is, again, a parliamentary debate, again, there'll be a coin toss, and the winner of that particular coin toss will make a decision as to whether they'll support or defend the first proposition, and then the losing side of the coin flip will then make a decision as to the second proposition, whether they wish to either present, support, or oppose. So those are the rules. Since I didn't, and I don't get paid till tomorrow, I had to borrow a quarter from Dr. Griffin. So will the captains of the debate team now come forward? Let's get this show started.
Will oppose for the first topic.
All right, Howard University will oppose as to the first proposition, and Morehouse then will support. All right, let's get started. The first proposition, let me read it. Resolved. This House would pass a national voter identification law. Morehouse.
Good afternoon. My name is Austin Williams. I'm a senior political science major from Los Angeles, California. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out today. I'd like to thank all you guys from Morehouse for coming out to support us. So with that being said, we'll get right into it. The resolution that we're here to debate today is this House would pass a national voter identification law. We as the Affirmative will take the liberty of defining this House as the United States federal government, and the rest of the resolution will be interpreted straightforward as would pass a national voter identification law. So ladies and gentlemen, right now as we speak, our democracy is under assault. When we look at what makes America America, it's that each individual, each citizen has the opportunity to express their political and economic ethos legitimized through the vessel of the vote. And right now, when we look at certain trends that are happening as far as the implementation of voter identification laws, those rights are under assault. Right now, we have individuals like Mike Terzier, for example, who is a Pennsylvania stateman, who could be quoted as saying, voter identification laws, which were passed in Pennsylvania, will allow Mitt Romney to win the election. So why is this? He knows that voter identification laws in Pennsylvania will allow Mitt Romney to win the election because within their plan, they did not allocate enough funds so that citizens can get the documents that are needed to obtain a voter identification. And as we know, this will systematically disenfranchise people who have to go through economic hardships, which include African Americans and Latinos disproportionately. When we look at what's happening right now, we have 2 million dead people who are registered to vote, which means that at any time, if an individual decides to walk up to a booth who does not have a voter identification laws, he can cast a vote within their name. If we take Senator Tommy Williams, for example, he testified in the Texas voter ID case that his grandfather passed away in 1965, but that his dead grandfather has been casting ballots for 40 years. Ultimately, this has led to a lack of confidence within our electoral system. In the last election in 2010, only 41% of the nation turned out to vote. Voter identification is the solution, so let our position as the Affirmative be clear. We are not saying that voter identification laws are intrinsically bad. But what is bad is states and statesmen using this as a partisan weapon to fulfill their political agenda. So what do we suggest? We suggest that the federal government step in and that they make it a requirement that individuals have voter identification laws, but that the documents needed to achieve these, the documents needed to obtain a voter identification law will be subsidized. We won't have to take the economic burden of having to pay for a driver's license, for example, of having to pay for a marriage license, of having to pay for a Social Security card. So ultimately, what will our plan do? It's an opportunity to enfranchise rather than disenfranchise voters. And we can ultimately mobilize voters. These voter identifications, as well as the documents needed to obtain them, will be provided at a local DMV or at a local post office. One of the reasons that some voter identification laws have been struck down, Texas, for example, is that they will require you to have a photo identification. But to do that, let's look at the logistics. If I'm 80 years old and I don't have a photo ID, and I live somewhere deep in the country, the closest DMV may be 40, 50, 60 miles away from me. So to counteract such laws, to counteract such legislation, we will make sure that these are provided at local post offices. Next, we will solve for the inconsistencies within voter identification laws as they stand. We will create one universal voter identification law. Secondly, this prevents fraud. The closest election that we've had within our nation was in 1880 and was decided by a little under 2,000 votes. So we can imagine what 2 million dead register votes can do to an election. And I think we all do not want another Bush scenario, where an individual who we did not want in office was questionable. It was a questionable circumstance as to whether he was legitimately voted in or not. So we need the federal government to step in and correct these problems. Lastly, and most importantly, this will restore public confidence within our voter system, which is the most important thing that we as Americans, we as members of a democratic society can want to achieve. So what will happen under our policy? Now, individuals can go to the polls, and with this new government issue identification card, they will be allowed to vote, as well as what's already been deemed as legitimate photo identification under the status quo, which includes a U.S. Armed Service photo ID, a U.S. passport regardless of its expiration date, and a valid state-issued student ID card. This plan will be implemented in 2016 so that we can make sure that each individual has enough time to get the documents as well as the identification needed so that nobody will be turned away to express their political will on voter day because they cannot take the economic burden of getting a voter identification card. So, ladies and gentlemen, our opposition will get up here right now and they will try to convince you of two things, which are simply unfounded and are rooted in the politics of fear rather than logic. They will try to convince you that any type a voter identification law will systematically disenfranchise minorities. But this simply isn't true. If we look at what happened in the 2008 election, we take Georgia and Indiana, for example. Those particular states have voter identification laws, and they had higher turnouts than states who had none at all. The next would probably make the issue of cost, that if the government subsidized such initiative, it'll cost too much. But ladies and gentlemen, we cannot put a price on securing the transparency and the reliability of our most precious process as people of a democratic society, and that's the electoral process. So our plan will ultimately prevent fraud. It will allocate government resources in a way that's beneficial to demographics that are most in need. It will optimize confidence in our electoral system, and it will empower voters. So with that being said, I challenge our opposition to prove otherwise. Thank you.
All right. Let's now, that was the Prime Minister. Let's now hear from the Leader of the Opposition.
To the presidents of our great institutions, Dr. Franklin of Morehouse College and your lovely wife, to our president, Dr. Sidney Rabeau, and our lovely First Lady of Howard University, to our moderator, the Honorable Judge Williams, Jr., to the faculty, staff, and students of Morehouse College and my dear Howard University, to our colleagues of the Morehouse debate team, and to my partner, and last but not least, to our audience, good afternoon. We believe that this House should not pass a national voter ID law. But first, let's give you our definition. We define it as a government-issued ID. And we believe so for three major reasons. Our first is that it systematically and deliberately deteriorates the minority vote. Our second is that it creates an unnecessary burden. And our third is that it has a disparate impact on minorities. But let's look to the opposition or side government's points. They said that democracy is under assault. Well, we believe that democracy is truly under assault if they would like to disenfranchise minority voters. We also asked side government that it seems that they're straddling the line. Do you oppose or do you support a national voter ID law? Their also second point was that voter ID laws are a solution, but we see this is not true. Their plan is not correct. They also said that it prevents fraud, but it does not do so because we see that fraud is not a huge issue. Their last point was that it restores confidence. But how are we restoring confidence in our country when we're trying to disenfranchise the minority vote? We all know this minority vote as those of us who are African Americans, Latinos, the elderly, or the poor. Those are the people we are concerned about. But on to our first point. It systematically and deliberately deteriorates the minority vote. A national voter ID law is acting as a false pretense to suppress the minority vote for the 2012 election. Pretense is defined as the act of pretending, a false appearance or action intended to deceive. I do not accept.
Doesn't accept it.
It is now serving as the new millennium Jim Crow. So I ask you that you do not let side house fool you all. It functions basically as voter suppression. Several elected officials have gone on record by saying that a national voter ID law is a tactic to suppress the minority vote. On to our second point. It creates an unnecessary burden. A national voter ID law is a violation of our constitutional rights. We see the 15th Amendment was put in place, and it prevented any state from denying the right to vote to any male citizen on account of his race. Or we see in the 24th Amendment that banned the use of poll taxes, where such taxes were imposed by 5 states, in Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi, Texas, and Virginia, states that are now trying to implement a voter ID law. Or we even see in the Civil Rights Movement where it took the 15th Amendment and 24th Amendment and that movement to make it a reality. Poll taxes were used to make African Americans pay to be able to vote.
My question today is, you talk about the problems that states have. When the states have a problem, isn't it the federal government's responsibility to create a law that solves this problem?
This is not a problem. This is something that is creating a bigger problem by disenfranchising their population, which are the minority vote. We need to show America that the black vote, the minority vote, still counts. Our third point is that it is a disparate impact on minorities. We are worried about those who are poor, those who are less educated, those who are older, those who don't drive or use social services, those who live in inner cities or rural areas like the state that I'm from in Alabama. Let me tell you about some people who are being affected by these laws. They are Dorothy Cooper, Thelma Mitchell, and Betty Jones. Dorothy Cooper is a 96-year-old African-American woman who says she has voted in every election but once since she became eligible to vote. Yet, when she attempted to obtain a voter ID, she was turned away because she did not have a copy of her marriage license. Even to look at the story of Thelma Mitchell. Thelma is a 93-year-old woman who cleaned the Tennessee Capitol for 30 years. She never received a birth certificate, however, because she was delivered by a midwife in Alabama in 1918, and there was no record of her birth. When she attempted to obtain a voter ID, she was turned away for lack of a birth certificate by a clerk who suggested that she could have been an illegal immigrant. Or the story of Miss Betty Jones, who's 77 years old, and after the death of her husband, After the death of her husband, she moved from Cleveland. She moved from Cleveland to Wisconsin, and after her daughter discovered that she had to figure out a way to get a birth certificate for her mother, who never had one because she was born at home in the South, she encountered many obstacles. Her daughter had to pay for costs that were unexpected to her and her family. But these are only a few stories of people who are being impacted by a national voter ID law. The stories live on in each and every one of us. If not in my family with my grandparents, your grandparents. If not your aunts or your uncles, my aunts and uncles. This is an issue that is affecting our country, and it's something that must be stopped. We believe on this side that a national voter ID law is being put in place to systematically and deliberately deteriorate the minority vote. We believe that it's an unnecessary burden, and we also believe that it's a disparate impact on the minority vote. Again, as I stated in my first point, it is key for us to show America that the Black vote, the Latino vote, the minority vote still counts. We have a duty as American citizens to show up and show out and say that yes, this country is one that believes in its people. Do not side with side government and say that we should pass a national voter ID law. Do we not care about the least of these? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a Morehouse alum, I might add, said injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This is a threat. So if you believe in your people, if you believe in your vote, I ask you that you side with Shirley Chisholm when she said, let me tell you like it really is. You have something going, my brothers and sisters, and that's your one vote. It's your one vote. Do not sell it out, and do not pass a national voter ID law.
All right. Again, ladies and gentlemen, that was the second speaker. We have 4 additional presenters on this first proposition. And let me remind the audience of a couple things. First of all, the speakers are being timed, and they're paying attention to the time. And as the moderator, I would ask that you save your applause to the end of the proposition, because these presenters have to concentrate. So let's not cheer on various points. Let's just wait until all of the presenters are finished. I think that's the best approach. Now, the third presenter is a member of the government who will offer the first rebuttal.
Thank you for being here, everyone. This is a very important debate that we are having today. But there is a myth that has been perpetuated by the Howard team, seeking to paint our national voter ID law as the same laws that were struck down in Texas. This is not the case. The Prime Minister presented a completely different law. There is no national voter ID law already on the books. This is not the same thing as the state laws. And the state laws, they disenfranchise minorities because they fail to provide the logistical support to get senior citizens, minorities, their birth certificate, to pay for the voter IDs. In our national voter ID law, we do this. So this is a big difference. Secondly, our democracy is very similar to the human body. When you have a problem, you don't wait to go to the doctor until you have a heart attack. No, you eat the correct food, you work out, and you visit the doctor periodically to make sure that you are healthy. Likewise, we are saying that we have a real lurking situation. There's a heart attack coming in our American democracy. There are 2 million dead voters still registered today. And we are saying that now we need to eat the right diet, meaning we need to provide all our citizens the correct voter ID so that Dorothy cannot be turned away when it's time for her to vote because the federal government sent her ID in the mail. Secondly, we're asking you, the Congress, to work out so that we come and provide the correct programs for her to have her IDs. And last, we're asking to take a trip to the doctor by having the federal government tell the states, this is not how we operate, and we're going to fix our democracy right now by passing a bill that is the National Voter Identification Law.
Point of information, you accept?
Do you have the money to make sure that Dorothy Cooper,
Yes.
Miss Jones are able to obtain IDs?
Yes. If we have the billions of dollars to spend a day in Iraq, we have $55 million to make sure our democracy works. I think we can afford this. Secondly, the arguments against voter IDs that have been in the media are greatly exaggerated. This does not disenfranchise minorities in general. It's particular examples in Texas and Florida that disenfranchise voters. Here, the big difference that is between the Georgia law on voter ID, which was held up by the Supreme Court, and the Texas law, which was struck down, is that in Georgia, they pay for the voter IDs, so the poorest, who happen to be the majority of blacks and Latinos, don't have to pay out of pocket to try and get a voter ID. Here, we're doing the same thing. We're having the national government pay for it. We're having the national government make sure that senior citizens have birth certificates, and we have the logistical operations in place to do this. If we can have a census that goes around and collects data from 330 million Americans every 10 years, then one time we can get 36 million citizens in ID in 4 years. Again, we're trying to accomplish this by 2016 and putting a hold on the current process, so in the current election, we have the situation taken care of. Secondly, I'd like to point out the fact that they made the statement that fraud does not exist. We provided a statistic that there are 2 million voters who are already dead who at any time I can come up and say, my name is Elijah Johnson. Yeah, he's dead, but I'm going to cast a ballot under his name that makes sure a Republican governor wins this state. They said fraud doesn't exist, but they provided no evidence to this fact. They just made the statement. In debate, we require evidence. When we have an argument, we require that you support the claims that you make, and we hold you, audience, to this valid opinion of how we talk about things. Lastly, they ignored our entire argument. We named several advantages to voter ID, that you optimize voter confidence. If I don't have to worry about the fact that when I go and vote and the people speak, so that Barack Obama, if he's voted into election, doesn't have to worry about Mitt Romney cheating him out of the White House, that's the reason that I continue to make sure I vote and participate in the political process. Whereas if I'm an American citizen and I went out of my time, I took off work to come and vote, and then the other party steals the election like what happened already in 2000 with Bush v. Gore, that's a reason for me to stick at home. So this is a reason we need to keep our political participation up by fixing this problem right now, and that's something our law does. Secondly, we allocate government resources in a way that's beneficial to demographics. Again, this is a way to make sure that we get around the country and talk to who are the members of our nation. And we make sure that we send a letter, make a phone call, send a vehicle to make sure that we are talking and having a conversation with minorities and senior citizens and college students who are typically disenfranchised. Now we can also collect some information, know a little bit more about them, so now we can, as a government, create a collective action to tackle bigger problems like poverty, like education, like tax reform. Why? Because we've talked and had a conversation. Our democracy works the correct way, and now we can address real issues. Now, on the other hand, our opponents have no other solution for the problem of fraud. Their solution is to do nothing. Their solution is allow 2 million dead voters to put our democracy at risk of a heart attack. We're asking you to put on your doctor's hat. Remember, American citizens go to medical school, participate in their economy, and save the heart of our democracy. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope that you enjoy this debate. You remember that here, we in America have always been about tightening our bootstraps and making sure that we do the hard work. We don't sit around and watch problems lurk on the sideline and just let them happen. We take preventative action to keep our American body working and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, member of the government. Thank you. Thank you. And just want to let the audience know that occasionally, while the presenter is putting on his debate, an opposition side can always approach the podium and they can ask for a point of information. And it's up to the debater to decide whether to allow it or not. So that's what that process is. Our fourth presenter is a member of the opposition who will offer their first rebuttal.
Good afternoon, everyone. Before I begin, I want to start by thanking my eloquent partner for her strong constructive and thanking Morehouse for their interesting remarks. Now, what's important to realize is that in this debate, the only way that the audience can truly be engaged is if we focus on reality. If we look at the facts and we don't see that we have some proposed mythological law, and in fact, that we don't actually have any law at all. Now, to understand that their law is mythological, we understand that the states actually have power when it comes to elections. We understand that the voter identification laws that they're saying provide some type of solution to voter fraud is also mythological.
Point
and
of
then finally,
information.
okay. When we realize that with the national government, there's a $14 trillion deficit, and they just want to add more money. They want to use the national resources that the states have already been acclimated to. But now let's go into their actual points. The first point, insofar that they counteract state oppression. He ignores the truth that on the national level, there is partisanship. He ignores the truth that our president, a Democrat, has been talked about by Republicans constantly. Our First Lady is made fun of constantly. Insofar that partisanship does occur on the national level, we see that the same thing that happens in Texas, the same thing that's happening in Florida, the same thing that's happening in Pennsylvania can also occur nationally, and that's why we strongly oppose a national identification law. Accepted.
Are you aware that in 1965, it was the federal government who successfully enfranchised African American and Latino voters in the first place?
I guess we need a history lesson here. When we look at the Voting Rights Act of 1965, it was reinforcing laws that were actually put in place by the state and the government. We look at the amendments that it was reinforcing. That went through a state and national process. But now to continue, when we talk about the state oppression, we understand that it can also occur at the national level, and that's what national identification laws will do. They will allow that oppression to be hitting every state, not just the ones that are currently contentious. Then we go on to the idea that there's a prevention of fraud. What's important to recognize is that, one, you're more likely to be struck by lightning than to be impersonated at the polling place. That means voter fraud does not occur often. Voter fraud is rare, but he wants to allocate national resources and forget the state's power to have this law. But let's go on to understand that when we talk about restoring confidence and preventing voter fraud, voter identification laws do not do this. Because of the fact that you can go to the polling place and you can actually show a fake identification card and you will still get that ballot of that person. Insofar that voter fraud is not stopped by a voter identification law because there's such thing as fake IDs, there's such thing as false documents, voter identification laws are not soluble. They do not solve any problems. Then we go into the second point insofar that they say that there's an increase in 2008. This increase was phenomenal. The African American community did increase their voter turnout when it came to 2008. But that wasn't because of voter identification laws. That was because of Barack Obama. We saw who was on the ballot, and that's why we saw more African Americans showing up at the polling place. We saw that because we had a new system, because we had a new person, a new candidate to actually engage the African American community, we saw an increase in voter turnout. Accepted.
Well, you mentioned the 2008 greater turnout in the state of Georgia and Indiana, which did have voter ID laws. While you said clearly that the greater turnout, I'm getting to the question.
Okay.
The greater turnout may not have been caused by Barack Obama. Doesn't the precedence of already having a voter ID law show that voter ID laws don't stop the turnout?
No. We understand that although these voter ID laws were something that actually did not stop the turnout, we understand that it is still a hindrance. It is still unjust. It is still an obstacle that should not be in place. And that goes to our case. We recognize that there are unnecessary burdens in place that are stopping people from going to the polls. The unnecessary burdens come from the Constitution insofar that we see that, one, the 15th Amendment said that regardless of your race, you should be able to vote. The 24th Amendment, it ended the poll tax, and then the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was something that reinforced those two amendments. If we allow for a voter identification law, we'll see the resurrection of Jim Crow, the resurrection of the poll tax. Because before you can vote, you have to pay for an identification card. But before you pay for that card, you have to go and pay for your birth certificate and pay for your Social Security card. This occurs on a national level insofar that they still want to have some type of registration process. Accepted.
Right. You spoke of earlier of our policy being a poll tax. And I was wondering if you were listening in our policy when we said that such an initiative would be funded by the federal government.
Insofar that he's saying that some initiative will be funded by the federal government, he'd have to recognize that means that hospitals will be losing money because they charge for birth certificates. That means that departments of public safety and DMVs, they'll be losing money because they won't be getting the money that they had before when it came to purchasing IDs. So therefore, there's still going to be some type of cost associated with going to the vote. Going to the polling place would not be a free fundamental right anymore. It would be the reinforcement of Jim Crow. But now let's understand this disparate impact. Insofar we look at the Brennan Center for Justice, we understand that they estimated that 20 million people in this upcoming election, November 2012, will be disenfranchised. While this is statistics from the state level, we see that they can actually occur at a greater height when it comes to the national level. Accept it.
So you think it's okay for the federal government to spend $1 billion a day in a war in Iraq, but not spend $1 billion total to save our democracy?
There's this thing in debate that we call fallacies. What it is when you have some type of lack of logic or when you don't address the argument. So throwing this red herring is irrelevant to this case. But at this point, I want to look at the resolution holistically. Let's look at the words of my partner. Let's look at the words that Martin Luther King, a Morehouse man, has stated, caring about the least of these. Let's go back to our roots and understand that Ubuntu, an African proverb, told us, I am because we are. We have to understand that this is a communal harmony. This communal harmony is what kept us out of slavery when we look at Frederick Douglass, when we look at Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth. This communal harmony is what fought Jim Crow during the Civil Rights Movement when we look at Malcolm X and Stokely Carmichael. This communal harmony is what helped build these wonderful institutions, Howard University, Morehouse College, and Spelman College. We have to understand that they stood against slavery. They stood against the jelly bean jar. They stood against poll tax. And the fact is that we now have to stand against voter deterrence. We have to stand against voter suppression. And we have to stand against this voter identification law. So that's why this House, Howard University, strongly opposes the resolution. And we say that you should not pass a voter identification law.
And we'll also have the leader of the opposition who will defend the final rebuttal argument.
Thank you all again for being here for this wonderful debate. It's truly an honor to be debating these wonderful topics that are truly prevalent in our time today. We first would like to tell you all again that we do not believe a national voter ID law should be implemented. We understand that it was once stated that a voteless people is a hopeless people. An elected official in Florida said that tactics were put in place to suppress the minority vote, that it was simply a tool to make sure that minorities do not go out and vote in the 2012 election. We see that this is a major issue. We've told you our 3 points, but let me tell you all again. Our first is that it systematically and deliberately deteriorates the minority vote. Our second is that it is an unnecessary burden. And our third is that it has a disparate impact on minorities. We understand that implementing such a law is a discriminatory practice. But we as a people have always responded to discrimination. So therefore, let's respond again. We understand that a national voter ID law is no different than a poll tax. We see that our nation's first African-American Attorney General, Eric Holder, said at an NAACP convention that voter ID laws are nothing but a modern-day form of a poll tax. In a speech at the annual conference in Houston, Holder said many voters would have to travel great distances in order to obtain their necessary paperwork to receive this photo ID, and that some would struggle to have to pay for such cost. We see that a national voter ID law is nothing different than a poll tax. We see that it's no different than putting a jelly bean jar in front of me and asking me how many jelly beans are in the jar. It's no different than asking me to recite or tell you that I know our nation's Constitution by being able to vote. By implementing such a law, we are disenfranchising what so many people like Dr. King, Ralph Abernathy, and Fred Shuttlesworth fought for in our country. And that was to make sure that people like me and people like you have our fundamental right to vote. We understand, again, that it's a discriminatory law. But we, again, as a people, have always responded to discrimination. If we made it through Jim Crow, we can make it through this. Again, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. If we defeated the poll tax, if we defeated the literacy test, if we defeated the jelly bean jar, if we defeated violence at the polls, we too can defeat this. but to look at what Morehouse told you all in their speech. They mentioned that voter fraud is an issue. My partner told you all that it does not occur that often. They also said the democracy is under assault. And they mentioned that these states that had the high turnout was something that was done in 2008 during the election of President Barack Obama. Let's face it, it's not about the card, it's about the mind behind the card. And the mind behind the card is trying to disenfranchise and suppress the minority vote. This is an issue, my people. Wake up and do not let anyone deceive you that this is not an issue. It's something that we must continue to fight against. We told you that we defeated all of these things. And we told you that we are still a people moving forward. We still need to show America that the black vote still counts. Let's fight. If you fight, help Ms. Jones, help Ms. Applewhite, help Ms. Mitchell, help Ms. Cooper. We shall overcome, and we will overcome the obstacles that are posing a threat to the democratic process in the 2012 election. Stand for something, my people, and we shall overcome. Do not implement a national voter ID law, and remember that your vote still counts. Let's rally our churches, let's rally our civic groups, and make sure that we are not stopped, and that we continue to re-elect our nation's first African-American president, and Barack Obama. Do not let your vote go to waste. Thank you.
All right. And our last presenter on this first proposition will be the Prime Minister, who would defend the final rebuttal vote.
Well, I want to thank everybody again for coming out. It's been an exciting debate. I'd like to thank Howard for the argument that they put forward. But there's a lot to get into, so I'll begin by starting off countering a couple of points that they gave you, and then I'll get back into why this House, why the United States federal government must pass a national voter identification law. Now, I want to thank Ms. Gavette because she gave a very great speech. It was fiery. The rhetoric was great. But in debate, what we do, we debate parliamentary debate, which means that when I present a case and I give contentions, you cannot come up here and deliver a canned speech and completely ignore our case. She kept on talking about disenfranchisement, disenfranchisement, disenfranchisement. Well, I'm not sure if she heard the part of our case where we said that minorities are being disenfranchised because they are not being provided the funds necessary to get the documents in order to achieve a voter identification. So, within our plan, we clearly stated that the federal government will make it available to citizens to get a marriage license, to get a driver's license, to get whatever type of photo identification needed so that on election day, they will not be turned away from the polls. Next, they made the issue of voter fraud. They said it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist. Well, again, in debate, you must substantiate your claim with some statistics, which is what they failed to do. As I previously mentioned, when we look at what happened in the Texas voter identification case, the main lady on the trial who was in charge of the state election said that in Texas alone, she believes that 239 votes were voted from dead citizens that could have been voted by some type of voter identification law. So we went on that point. Next, she said the member of opposition said that the 2008 election was basically, minorities came out to vote in the 2008 election not because voter identification laws, but because Barack Obama was the candidate. We completely agree. He misinterpreted our point. Our point is that when we look at the examples of Georgia and Indiana, those particular states had voter identification laws in place and they still had record turnout. So statistically, when we look at examples, it's been proven that this will not suppress voter turnout, which is what they were trying to tell you guys the whole time. They haven't proven that point. Next, they said that it's a resurrection of a poll tax. Our opposition gave us a history lesson. Well, let me give you a history lesson real quick. A poll tax is a direct cost. It's Supreme Court precedent that if I have to put a gallon of gas in my car to go and drive, that does not constitute as a poll tax. Within our plan, any cost to the citizen to vote will be an indirect cost. So you're wrong on that point, sir. And last, they said that we should not implement such a plan because it will cost hospitals money. But if the federal government is paying for this, then I don't know how that'll cost hospitals money. So what our plan essentially does is it enfranchises voters rather than disenfranchises them, because now individuals will not be turned away to vote because they could not carry the financial burden, which was essential to our plan. Next, it will prevent fraud. They kept on telling you fraud isn't a problem, fraud isn't a problem, fraud isn't a problem. We have 2 million dead people registered to vote right now, which means that if a state doesn't have a voter identification law, I can go up and I can vote in somebody else's name. And if they believe that that's not a problem, then I don't know what will be a problem to them. Next, they made the issue of cost. Right now, we are spending billions of dollars to combat threats that we see as foreign, whether it be Iran or Iraq. If we can't spend $50 million, I don't care how much it costs. We need to protect the democracy here at home, because everything that happens in that White House is going to be determined through our electoral process. And if we have a system that could put somebody in that White House illegitimately, that needs to be corrected. So I encourage you as the audience to stand on the side of logic rather than empty emotion and support a national voter identification law that will empower voters. Thank you for your time.
All right, all right. Let us give a hand to all the debaters on this first proposition. A very important issue. Wonderful. Both sides were wonderful. All right. We're going right into the second proposition. Let me read it. Resolve. This House believes that affirmative action is justified. We'll call now for the Prime Minister to introduce their side of the argument. Who goes? Are you taking pro or taking pro? Pro. Pro. This is support, and you're the opposition.
Take this up a little bit. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Fortson Gaines. I'm a graduating senior at Morehouse College, and I'm here to stand affirm that this House believes that affirmative action is justified. Now, we will define affirmative action as a set of policy procedures that take into account minority status as a means of atoning for historical discrimination. An example being, if an African-American male decides that he wants to apply to law school, that law school will not only see that he has a unique contribution that he can bring to the academic setting, but also there has been discrimination placed upon his ancestors for decades and centuries on end that has affected his ability to not only be successful, but also probably hindered him in his application process as he's matriculated to college and also graduated. Another example would be when a woman applies for a job, and that same woman not only wants to receive some type of employment, but also wants to be able to effectively compete in a corporate environment. It should be noted by that employer that that woman has been historically held back, and in fact, if she were to be employed, probably wouldn't have been promoted at the same rates historically or been paid the same amount historically as her male counterparts. That is affirmative action. And so with that understanding, I will begin with a quote from Lyndon B. Johnson, who spoke at Howard's commencement in 1965. President Johnson said, "Do not take a person who for years has been hobbled by chains and liberate him. Bring him to the starting line of a race and then say, you are free to compete with all others, and still justly believe that you have been completely fair." It should be understood that affirmative action is justified by America's past, is justified by America's present, and will continue to be justified in America's future because we have a race that is not equal. This still isn't a fair race that we're running in, and we have to correct that. We have started an effort that began in 1961 when John F. Kennedy issued an executive order and was continued by President Lyndon B. Johnson in 1965 when he issued his own executive order that said that not only was affirmative action a compelling interest to the United States of America, but should be a policy adopted by all institutions within this nation for the well-being of our country. It should also be noted that our government has historically acted to redress past wrongs. You look at even the 13th through 15th Amendments that not only helped set the slaves free, but made them be considered people within our society. We have a history of acting on behalf of our citizens when we realize we have done wrong. And it should be noted that our government has done wrong. Let us have no dispute about that. However, when we start a job, we as Americans finish that job. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy helped start the job of using affirmative action as a way of leveling the playing field so that African Americans and other minorities could compete within our society and have equal footing with their white counterparts. But that job is not finished. We haven't finished our work, and the numbers seem to support that. Although we're 50 years into a process that's trying to redress 400 years of injustice, black unemployment is still 2 times the national average. Recently, as far as July, black unemployment was 14.4%, while the national average was right around 8%. At the same time, we have women who are employed at record rates. However, they still only make 75% of what their male counterparts make. And all major indicators of disenfranchisement, such as poverty rates, unemployment, and violent crime, are still focused in minority communities because of a lack of quality opportunity. It's not that we're incapable. However, the opportunity that we have looked to be given in America, a country that says that we guarantee freedom and liberty to all and equal access, has not met its promise. Furthermore, without affirmative action policies in place, institutions have regressed in their diversity efforts. If you look at UCLA alone, many of you are from Los Angeles. I heard you applaud for my partner here, Austin Williams. That institution saw a decline of over 100 admitted black students when they removed their affirmative action policy from 2007 to 2008. If we don't have any type of government instruction, if we don't have any type of embrace policy from an official state, then diversity efforts within these institutions will not be embraced. The fact of the matter is that presently speaking, 50% of African American boys won't graduate from high school, but the ones that do, although they have tried their best to be successful, have continually been denied equal footing with their white counterparts and with other majority participants within this nation. The same could be said for Hispanics, the same could be said for women. Unfortunately, we have a nation that has a long storied history of discrimination, a long storied history of not giving equal opportunity to all of its citizens. And if we do not act to correct that, and if we do not continue to fight to correct that, we will fail as a nation. That is our present issue. Now, many of us being young students have an interest in the future, a vested interest in the future. We want to be able to raise our children in a nation that we can be proud of. We want to grow old and say that we can be proud to be Americans and that we are equal participants in this democracy, in this union. Well, it should be noted that for America's future, if we don't embrace the notion of affirmative action being used to level our playing field and hope that one day an organic culture can take over that allows for us to have a true equal playing field, we'll face a few problems. The first of which is America's political capital. This nation has always tried to serve as a beacon of hope and opportunity to those around the world. However, our political capital is in deep jeopardy if we can't even guarantee opportunity and equal opportunity and equality right here at home. Beyond that, lest we forget, the character of a nation is judged by how we treat the least among us. Right now, we have overwhelming concentrations of poverty and also overwhelming concentrations of a lack of opportunity in our most minority-focused communities. If you look at the community around our own institution, Morehouse College, we see young men every day who, although very capable, very bright, young men that I've mentored on occasion, have not been given the full opportunity to participate not only in the society that they see around them, but also the full opportunity to exercise their talent because they simply were born into a very difficult situation. If we don't do anything to address that, their hopes are limited at best. That is why we must act as a community, because if our minority groups are treated less than our white counterparts, if our minority communities are not given the same opportunities, we will face a nation in which we will disappear. Our character will become completely poisoned. We have a nation right now that guarantees that all of us have equal opportunity, and if we look at our president, we see that there is hope. However, our hope has not been met, our promise has not been fulfilled, and we must act to make sure that affirmative action is kept in place for the well-being of this nation, for the well-being of the black community, the Hispanic community, for women, for all those who call themselves Americans, because otherwise, our nation will disappear and our spirit will flounder. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to our opposition's speech.
All right. All right, that was the Prime Minister who introduced the argument. Now we have the Leader of the Opposition to introduce their side of the argument.
What an honor it is to participate in the second annual Johnson Mays Student Debate. I would like to take this time to thank our esteemed presidents, our distinguished faculty, friends, and the Howard University student body. And to our friends from Morehouse College, welcome. I would also like to thank our moderator, the Honorable Judge Williams, Jr., for presiding over today's debate. Affirmative action is not justified. because it no longer benefits black people in America. And it is mythological in its application. But let us explain. From 1619 until the Brown versus Board decision in 1954, this country supported legally sanctioned institutional racism. In the 1960s, the government would try to reconcile this history with affirmative action. But affirmative action in 1968 is not the same as affirmative action in 2012. It has been diluted, and this is our first point, and the writing is on the wall. In the Supreme Court case, the University of California versus Bakke, the Supreme Court ignored its past wrongs and affirmed Bakke's claim of reverse discrimination. Justice Marshall, in the dissenting opinion, would summarize the effects of the decision. The position of the Negro today in America is the tragic but inevitable consequence of centuries of unequal treatment. Measured by any benchmark of comfort or achievement, meaningful equality remains a distant dream for the Negro. The case that codified the court's position came in 2003 in Gratz v. Bollinger. In Gratz, the court again ignored past discrimination and introduced diversity as the compelling state interest. In doing so, the highest court in the land chose to ignore this nation's history of legally sanctioned racism. The future of affirmative action is not meant for black people. And that leads us to our second point, which is critical in today's debate. As a matter of fact, an immigrant from another country who has never experienced discrimination can benefit from affirmative action. Affirmative action is more a mechanism for integration than a tool for eradicating past discrimination. Affirmative action has been expanded to include any non-white, and the pie hasn't grown for African Americans. This policy, while assisting the economic integration for some, fails to address the larger picture. Today, as we sit in this auditorium, incarceration rates for our brothers and sisters are skyrocketing. More than one legal scholar would call this the new Jim Crow, and who could deny with the logic? The counter of discrimination is not affirmative action. It's anti-discrimination. James Brown said, "I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Just open up the door. I'll get it myself," yes.
Point of information.
Yes. So, sir, you seem to suggest that immigrants have not faced any type of discrimination within the United States of America. Are you also embracing the idea that our Mexican-American counterparts have not been discriminated against within this country, specifically places like Arizona, over the last couple of years?
You misunderstand my point. The people that I'm referring to haven't discriminated past discrimination as a matter of law, as I mentioned, from 1619 to 1954. We're not gonna try to judge the varying degrees of discrimination, but that is indeed a fact. And that leads us to our third point, that affirmative action questions the validity of black achievement. To suggest that but for affirmative action, African Americans would not be successful is offensive, and I'm sure most of the people in this auditorium would agree. This directly contradicts the contributions of W.E.B. Du Bois, Carter G. Woodson, Charles Hamilton Houston, and Thurgood Marshall. We must borrow from these great minds and begin to look 50 years into the future. The Bible says, "A people without vision shall perish." What will affirmative action look like in 2022, in 2052, in 2112? My brothers and sisters, Howard University submits that self-determination is the key and economic freedom is the door, because it is still our HBCUs that graduate the lion's share of PhDs, scientists, engineers, doctors, lawyers, and legal activists. The evidence for self-determination is irrefutable. Howard University and Morehouse College prove that it is in these environments where formulas for solving life's most complicated equations are pioneered. But this debate would be incomplete without mentioning the contributions from our current commander-in-chief, who in 2010 issued Executive Order 1352 to promote excellence, innovation, and sustainability at historically black colleges and universities. It was his vision that earlier this year would pass the Educational Excellence for African Americans initiative. November 6th is the most important election in our nation's history, and we are on the brink of a huge step forward. but affirmative action is not a part of that step. Side opposition's arguments are flawed, and their logic is predicated on an antiquated interpretation of affirmative action because it no longer seeks to address past discrimination, but to promote diversity.
Sir, you brought up President Barack Obama. What is your response or opinion on his own personal claim that he is a beneficiary of affirmative action?
I think we also have to look at what he said prior to his election and said that his daughters have experienced great privilege in an admissions committee that would grant them affirmative action wouldn't be very fair. We must look to alternative methods to try to invest in ourselves and depend on self-determination and invest in the things that have made us successful. But on to the side opposition's points. As I stated, their first point is that affirmative action is meant to prevent discrimination. But again, we must look to grads. The affirmative action that they're talking about no longer exists. The court chooses to ignore past discrimination and instead is looking for alternative methods for supporting affirmative action that do not directly benefit those it was meant to. Their second point is that it's supposed to alleviate past wrongs, but as we stated, the courts have chosen to neglect this on several occasions. Their last point is that we must invest in our future, and this side agrees. But we believe that we can invest in our future by investing in ourselves and investing in our own institutions and investing at the primary level and not when you turn 18 and are applying for a job. With that, we see no other reason than to vote against today's resolution that affirmative action is justified because it no longer benefits African American people. Thank you.
All right. That was the leader of the opposition. Now a member of the government will offer the first rebuttal.
Good afternoon. My name is Nicholas Bacon. I'm a senior political science major representing Morehouse College here today. Now, to go ahead and dive on into this debate, the premise of the opposition team's argument here today is that affirmative action has no implications or no benefits towards the African American community here today. And if we look at the statistics, if we look at tangible facts, that simply is not true. Their entire premise is false. Now, if we look back in 1997 at UCLA's admission numbers, they had 227 African American students admitted. Now, if we fast forward to 2007, they only had 100 African American students admitted. So therefore, if we actually look at these facts, through affirmative action, we actually are able to achieve more diversity. We're opening the door for opportunity. We're allowing more minorities to go to college. And this is obviously a direct benefit to African Americans, minorities. It's achieving diversity, and it benefits the entire nation. So, our opposition team, they came forward and they tried making the claim that affirmative action does not benefit African Americans specifically. But then he also tried bringing up the point that affirmative action questions the validity of our accomplishments. Now, I'm going to come before you here and say that you can't have it both ways. You can't say that affirmative action is having no implications and no benefits upon African Americans and then try to convince us that affirmative action is also leading others to question our own accomplishments and achievements. That simply is ridiculous. It does not make sense to have it that way. So to move forward, the government team has come forward here today, and we have described why affirmative action is justified through the past, the present, and the future. America is one of the most powerful, prosperous countries in the world, but discrimination and bigotry is something which has been instilled within our nation. Now, there is a strategic, cultural, and economic leverage that discrimination has given non-minorities, and we must be able to address this to understand why affirmative action is so essential here today. So discrimination is something that was legislated for centuries, and up until the Civil Rights Act of 1964, where we were finally able to achieve equality. However, instilled within the American psyche is a sense of discrimination, is a sense that non-minorities are more powerful, and then we must also acknowledge the fact that they are already entrenched within the system. So if we move forward from the Civil Rights Act of 1964, if we move forward from the point where we achieved legal equality, we also want to be able to achieve social equality. And through affirmative action, we're able to do this. Now, once again, one of the reasons affirmative action is so pivotal, expecting historically discriminated groups to operate as if parts of their fragmentation is not a product of active and past forces acting against them is not only brutish, but it's disingenuous to history. If we want to be able to have an equal playing field, true meritocracy, we need affirmative action to boost minorities and being able to show that their minority history, their past, is one of the active things working against them. And through this, we can be able to achieve full diversity and work towards a better America. Affirmative action does this. We highlight the accomplishments and the qualifications of minorities so that we can continue to open up the door for them and that they can be able to accomplish more. Now, the opposition team has claimed that Bakke versus California is one of the cases which has actually worked against us. And I'm here to argue that it's done the complete opposite. Bakke versus California has eliminated the use of quotas, which should, in theory, nullify their whole argument that is questioning the validity of our accomplishments. If we no longer have a quota system used within the United States, obviously our accomplishments and our acceptance within these institutions show that we have actively worked and that we have done this on our own merit. If we look at Grutz versus Bollinger, we should be able to understand that there is a real, tangible, compelling interest in achieving diversity for our nation. America strives, for the past century, we have strived to become a melting pot where immigrants and diversity can truly be achieved. However, not only African Americans have been targeted. If we consider World War II, if we consider the internment camps of the Japanese, our government has shown that we are actively willing and active participants in trying to solve for discrimination. America is seen as a beacon of democracy. If we want to be able to improve our image overseas and our credibility so that we can be able to spread the word of democracy and influence other movements such as the Arab Spring, we need to be able to show that diversity is pivotal in fulfilling this goal. Most importantly, if we want to be able to eliminate negative stereotypes, we have to be able to instill qualified minorities into key positions so that we can work to fight against negative stereotypes and perceptions that simply are not any longer true. Now, the opposition has come forward and they have pretty much named a myriad of reasons as to why affirmative action is not helping blacks, and African Americans, which we have pretty much claimed as falsehoods. But we have to imagine a world without affirmative action, and by doing so, we can truly understand whether affirmative action is just or not. Now, as we've already given with the California example, if we get rid of affirmative action, admissions for minorities will decrease. I can't picture any justification or any reasoning that would lead to the conclusion that that is just. Neither can I see how it is just to ignore the systemic racial exclusion society has had for so long. Expecting minorities that were disenfranchised at the institutional level to be able to come forward and compete simply does not make sense. Now, lastly, we will be duped. We know minorities are less well off, but we often forget why we are less well off. This is all a direct result of race being a major factor within our politics. If we looked at the age and the time of the Civil Rights Act, the South was historically a Democratic region of our nation. It is no coincidence that after the passing of the Civil Rights Act, the Democratic Party lost the South. Lyndon B. Johnson knew how pivotal race played for all minorities. However, he still believed that this legislation was essential for the framework of our nation. So by understanding how passing civil rights legislation was able to convince so many non-minorities to switch to an entirely different political party had nothing to do with policies, it had to do simply with race. So affirmative action works because it is able to it shows employers, it shows institutions that race is so pivotal in our history and should be acknowledged. Whenever we fill out an application, whenever we want to be admitted somewhere, race needs to be a real tangible factor in understanding our own accomplishments and our own merit. So thank you all.
All right. That was a member of the government. Our fourth presenter will be a member of the opposition who will offer the first rebuttal.
Now, before we begin this dismantling process, please permit me to thank President Franklin, President Rabeau, Ms. Maroon and White, and the Royal Court, Taylor, Sidney, Honore, the Student Government President, our friends and guests, our brothers from Morehouse College, and our moderator for what is proving to be an interesting academic exchange as we debate the merits of affirmative action and its role in the 21st century. Affirmative action is not justified. The opposition's argument is flawed, and so is the factual predicate that it stands on. It is very clear that the opposition has not mastered the judicial reasoning necessary to engage in this discourse. Affirmative action is not justified because, one, affirming my partner's position, it no longer benefits disadvantaged blacks in America. What exactly do I mean by this? Beyond the parameters of this debate, African Americans in the black community are engaged in the question, how am I going to eat today? Where am I going to work? How am I going to feed Jamal? Why are there 20 payday loan places in a 5-mile radius, but only one grocery store in a community that supports 3,000 people? Affirmative action can't answer this question. The African American household is on fire, and affirmative action cannot put this fire out. Why can't affirmative action put this fire out? Because affirmative action's power has been diluted by judicial precedents. Specifically, what do I mean? In 1978, in Bakke v. UC Davis, a case that the opposition seems to be confused about its judicial merits. In this case, what happened was the University of California, Davis had an affirmative action program where they would admit African Americans into the university through this affirmative action program by showing preference. Well, what happened is that Alan Bakke, a white male and also two-time reject to medical school, filed a complaint of reverse discrimination because although he had higher test scores, higher GPAs than a majority of the students admitted into the affirmative action program, he was still denied. How did the Supreme Court respond? The Supreme Court responded by condemning racial considerations in this affirmative action program that was geared to remedy the past effects of discrimination that resulted in the equality. Denied. It also, furthermore, not only did it condemn these racial considerations, what specifically do I mean? It also granted Alan Bakke admissions into the University of California, Davis Medical School. Look at what just happened there. On one side, they condemned the racial considerations necessary to remedy the past effects of discrimination, and on another side, they simultaneously grant yet another privilege to a white male who represents an already overrepresented majority. Again, stripping affirmative action of its power, but it doesn't stop there. In 1996, in Hobson v. Texas, the Supreme Court would then remove to resolve racial quotas. The University of Texas had an admissions program where they would take a percentage of African Americans into the university as a way of what? Remedying past discrimination, bringing diversity. But the Supreme Court ruled to strip these racial considerations away because Cheryl Hopwood was a white male, again filed reverse discrimination. But it didn't stop there. In 2001, Greta V. Berlinger at the University of Michigan Law School, the Supreme Court resolved University of Michigan had an affirmative action program that was geared to remedy the past effects of discrimination.
Point of information.
Denied. The Supreme Court denied this. The Supreme Court said the only reason for an affirmative action program is to promote diversity, a compelling state interest. Look at what just happened in legislative history. Affirmative action program that is designed to put African Americans into diverse university environments, into the mainstream of American life, is being stripped of the configurations necessary to make that process happen. In the University of Michigan, when diversity is only a compelling state interest, what it does is it integrates a few African Americans into the mainstream. But while the rest Their past discrimination and inequality goes unaddressed. Meanwhile, 3 million African American children are living in poverty, U.S. Census Bureau 2010. Meanwhile, unemployment rates are rising in the African American community. Meanwhile, black males continue to dominate the prison industrial population. These are all things that affirmative action cannot address because legal precedence has stripped it of its power. Furthermore, not only has it been stripped of its power by legal precedents, affirmative action program now has expanded its benefits to include beneficiaries such as immigrants, Hispanics, Africans, who make up 9% of the beneficiaries of the affirmative action program at Harvard University, while 2% of domestic blacks make up that population. White women are also beneficiaries of affirmative action. Now, don't get me wrong. I love my white chocolate sisters, my African brothers, my Hispanic dreamers and immigrants. But what is the legal point is this. None of these groups have inequality that can be linked to legislative and legally sanctioned discrimination and racism. That's where the African American community is different. And as we look forward in 2012, once we see the narrative of legislative precedence of affirmative action, what will it look like in 2015? What will it look like in 2035? What will it look like in 2095? These are the questions we must deal with. And as we approach Fisher v. Texas, this is yet another reminder that affirmative action will have no place in contemporary jurisprudence in the 21st century. And to the last point, they had a problem, the opposition, with us saying that to suggest that African Americans would not be successful but for affirmative action is offensive, because it is. And it negates an entire history of African American success without affirmative action. W.B. Du Bois, a Harvard graduate. It negates Carter G. Woodson, George Washington Carver, Barbara Jordan, Mary McLeod Bethune, Martin Luther King, and let's not forget Freedom Trail rider Thurgood Marshall, who was denied, who wanted to go to University of Maryland Law School, denied, who wanted to go to University of Maryland's Law School, but they didn't have an affirmative action program, so they don't like this. He went to Howard Law, left Howard Law, then got in. After he left Howard Law, then he went to work for the NAACP, and he did it without affirmative action. Became the Supreme Court Justice without affirmative action. And there's some Thurgood Marshalls in here today who have the spirit of self-determination. And to suggest that we will not succeed but for affirmative action is offensive. We firmly oppose.
All right. Our fifth presenter is also from the opposition. The leader of the opposition will defend the final rebuttal argument.
Thank you to my partner for your brilliant remarks and to the compelling arguments from Morehouse College. The issue is the future. We agree with side opposition that we should take steps to eliminate past discrimination and prevent discrimination in the status quo. But we disagree that affirmative action is the most effective way to do this. When they posed the question or challenged our argument that affirmative action questions the validity of black achievement, that still stands. When you ask someone at one of these institutions who has affirmative action, if they got there because of the quality on their own talent or because of affirmative action, you get a pause. That's what we're talking about. We cannot afford to put our faith in a policy that will never deliver on its promises. As we stated, the origin of affirmative action was to eliminate past discrimination, to address America's history, but it is not the same today. Legal precedence has shown that the courts favor diversity over facing history. The affirmative action that the side opposition is talking about does not exist today. Our future requires a better vision. We must follow the lead of our president and invest in our education. We must take back the pride in our achievements because the solution is not affirmative action, but anti-discrimination. Just open the door and give us the tools that we need so that we are able to compete and not a handout. The side opposition states that we need to imagine a world where affirmative action doesn't exist, but what they fail to realize is that we're already moving in that direction. The affirmative action that they are talking about is not the affirmative action that we see today. They offer a policy that has been deteriorating for over 50 years. All it stands on currently is to promote diversity, which was not its intent. It's unjustified because it can't achieve its purpose. As I stated, if we go down their case, they state discrimination, past wrongs, equal opportunity, but what we see is that on side opposition, that giving the tools that we need provides the equal opportunity and gives us what we need to accomplish what we can do. The past discrimination argument should not hold in today's debate because it isn't in the best interest of the courts. In fact, the courts have dismissed this as a reason for affirmative action. For them to come up and say in the next speech that we need to keep affirmative action to prevent past discrimination is to ignore affirmative action today. As we stated before, affirmative action has no place today because it's not able to do what it was set out to do. We stated the precedents. We showed the Supreme Court cases in Gratz v. Bollinger and Bakke. The highest court of the land has refused to accept its responsibility to address these past wrongs. Affirmative action has been expanded and no longer includes the people, or no longer sticks to just the people that it was meant to help. The pie for African Americans has not grown. That's why affirmative action is not justified. And with that, we see no other reason to devote in negation of today's resolution that affirmative action is justified.
All right. And then the final presenter will be the Prime Minister, who will defend affirmative action proposition.
I'd like to extend my deepest thanks to all of you for taking the time to attend today's debate. I hope you also take a lot away from this debate on an educational level, and I hope this helps inspire positive discourse between you after you leave today. I'd also like to extend my deepest thanks to our elegant preacher for his kind words and also for his unwillingness to take my question. Now, although I commend your right to speak as long as you want, I do want to give you some correction because you referenced confusion, and obviously I think you're a little confused. Now, you spoke about Bakke v. California, and you said that this stops affirmative action, it doesn't help black people. Well, I mean to correct you. Actually, Bakke v. California stopped racial quotas. If you talk about any qualification on black achievement, the quotas were the biggest issue that most white people had with it. That we got to make sure we get 6 black people thrown in this room just so we got some brown faces? That's the issue, sir. By stopping the quotas, if anything, what we have done is expand what it is affirmative action was meant to achieve, which is to say that we have capable, qualified minority applicants, and they are given the opportunity to equally compete within the realms of not only our academic society, but also employment opportunities. That's what affirmative action was meant to do. So the strike down quota says we're not just going to throw you in a room so that way you blacken us up a little bit. Instead, what that tells you is that because you went to school, because you had a certain GPA, because you had qualified test scores, that we're not going to throw out your name because it's Jamal. Instead, we're going to look at it like you should look at it, as an equal applicant, and say that you can succeed. Furthermore, when you speak about the dilution of what affirmative action is, I should also correct you by saying that race is still very much under consideration. In fact, that was at the beginning of my first speech. Race is under consideration, as are other aspects of being a minority in America, and in fact, it has been said that diversity is a compelling interest to America. If you reference case law, you can look at Grutter v. Bollinger itself. A compelling interest of diversity was at the center of that decision. And so to say that being black or Latino or anything else is not included in diversifying is absolutely ignorant to the definition of the term. Now, I will continue by saying that the last fallacy that I noted, and one that disturbed me quite deeply, was this contrast between affirmative action and addressing poverty. Obviously, we can't do both because as Americans, we're not capable of juggling a few things at a time. I've seen a lot of opportunities where we have. Now, there's 3 issues with what you're saying. The first of which is poverty is inherent in capitalism. Because we have a capitalist economic society, there's absolutely no way we can fully eradicate poverty until we address the way our economy works, which is far outside the scope of this particular debate. Furthermore, you can address both at the same time, as I said before. By helping black people, in many cases, we still are going to help the poor because disproportionately we are represented in that class within society. And beyond that, to have an affirmative action policy in place does not say that we also can't make sure that we're doing much more to invest in our schools, to invest in early childhood education, to invest in the people who are most downtrodden within this nation simultaneously. In fact, I would suggest that we do that. However, I can only talk about one thing today, and we got limited time. And so I will tell you this. To say that suggest that affirmative action hasn't helped minorities is absolutely ridiculous. It's appalling. If I can look at the President of the United States today as I watched Marine One fly past my hotel room and say that he's in that office and he, as a self-proclaimed beneficiary of affirmative action, that is an example all its own that stands by itself as to why affirmative action is needed in this nation. Furthermore, there are 3 reasons as to why we need to not only embrace affirmative action, but continue to fight for its existence within this nation. The first of which being, we haven't finished our goals. We have not achieved what it is we're supposed to achieve in America by equaling the playing field. The fact that we still see such discrepancies in poverty and access to opportunity tells us we're not running a fair race. Lyndon B. Johnson spoke of a race when he spoke at Howard University in 1965 because he knows that America is a competitive society. We all want to compete. Black, Latino, white, we want to have a fair shot. We don't back down from a fight and we look to win. But you can't win a race when you're starting 50 meters behind the next guy. That's what affirmative action helps address. Beyond that, in order for us to fulfill America's promise to not only our people right here, but to the world at large, we have to make sure that we're extending opportunity to all of our citizens. When you are born in this United States of America, you are supposed to be guaranteed an equal opportunity in this country, and we have yet to fulfill that promise or yet to live up to that guarantee to all American citizens. Until we do that, this country will not truly live up to its dream. That is what our alumnus, Martin Luther King Jr., said when he stood on the Washington Mall in 1963, and that's what we should continue to stand for as we push for the affirmative action to be included in American policies going forward. Now, I will finish by saying that this is what's most important about affirmative action. Although many of us look at affirmative action and say there's so many things wrong with it, it doesn't always help all black people. It hasn't addressed all our problems because it's had 50 years to work and things still aren't perfect. We understand this. We still live in an imperfect society. The United States of America said that we're going to continuously work to have a more perfect union, and yet our union is not perfect. So we must continue our fight. We must continue to have affirmative action in place so that way we can equal the level playing field until this becomes an organic type of culture. Until we can say that the people who run that corporation that hire want to make sure that they have different faces in their environment. Until we realize that we live in a global integrated economy, and that in order for us to be successful going forward, we need to have a representation of all different types of people when it is we approach the rest of the world. Until we realize that in order for America to be what it is supposed to be, all of us, black, Latino, female, gay, whatever it may be, can look at America and say, I'm an American first, and everything else comes second. We have not reached that point, and it seems far ahead. But until we continue to fight for affirmative action and we make sure that it lives up to its promise, we are failing ourselves in the process by absolutely suggesting that we don't need these opportunities and that if we don't become equal Americans, that's okay. Stand for something. Continue to fight because affirmative action is not only a necessity, it's the only way we're going to reach our full promise. So I thank you for your time and your attendance, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the evening.
All right, let us give all of these presenters a round of applause. Let us stand and thank them for debating these very, very important 2 issues. This was outstanding, outstanding, both sides. Thank you. All right. I want to have some awards now, and I simply will say I hear, as a judge, a lot of lawyering, but I have heard some outstanding positions and arguments today by these debaters, and I thank you, and I got a good lesson myself. Thank you.
Greetings, everyone. We're not quite done, but I would like to say hello to our presidents, Rebow and Franklin, and their first ladies, to the audience, to my Bison family. I would also like to thank Morehouse and everyone that attended and supported their debate team. These men did a phenomenal job and very outstanding, and I just love their intellect and their battle in terms of their POIs as well as their fight. This is an exhibition, and for that reason, we're dedicating trophies to both teams on today. So to Morehouse College, the debate team, I dedicate this trophy to you for your excellence, for your intellect, and for your fight. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to Howard University, I would like to once again thank you for having us here today. I think your debaters are to be commended for their research, their passion, and their demonstration of their oratorical skills today on this stage. I think what you saw was a wonderful debate and an exchange of intellectual ideas, not necessarily advocated by either position, but this was an exchange as a demonstration, or what we call an exhibition debate, to show that both schools are capable of arguing any position at the flip of a coin because they come from two great and wonderful institutions. With that said, I'd like to present the trophy that's in front of me to the Howard debate team for your accomplishments for today. Congratulations.
Let us please give our brilliant students another round of applause. President Rabeau and President Franklin, I hope you're as proud of the young people as I am. And so they're just so exemplary. And Mays and Johnson, they're proud of you. Thank you for what you've done. I want to take the opportunity to recognize, as we close this final session, those people who made all of this possible. We're members of the planning committee. Wherever you are, please stand. From Morehouse and from Howard. Where's Ms. Calhoun? Where's Ms. Calhoun? Fran Calhoun. These are the people who made yesterday and today possible. Now let's go forward tomorrow on the gridiron and have another level of competition, Morehouse versus Howard. Thank you all for coming. Enjoy your experience tomorrow. Thanks, guys. Very impressively proud of you.